What would you do if the person you trusted most betrayed you in the worst way imaginable? Imagine uncovering a horrifying secret in the dead of night. A secret so dark it forces you to take a stand you never thought possible. And what if that act of protection left not just your family but an entire nation reeling from its consequences? This is the story of Lisa Hamilton, a devoted mother and wife who lived in the quiet suburbs of Sunrise, Florida. From the outside, her life seemed perfect. A loving family, a respected husband, and a daughter who brought light into every room she entered. But behind closed doors, a horrifying truth was unraveling. One night, in a moment of desperation and fury, that truth exploded into a tragedy that no one saw coming. Stay with me until the end, because this case takes twists and turns that will leave you questioning everything. Welcome to Sunrise, Florida, a serene suburban town often described as a slice of paradise. Known for its sunny skies, sprawling parks, and tight-knit community, Sunrise was the kind of place where neighbors waved to each other from manicured lawns, and the biggest excitement of the week was a local bake sale. But in the early hours of May 15, 2014, this picture-perfect neighborhood was rocked by a tragedy, so shocking that it would forever stain its idyllic reputation. The sound of gunfire shattered the silence, and what had once seemed like a safe haven became the center of a horrifying crime scene. A crime that left a community grieving and a nation questioning the very fabric of trust and family. At the center of this story were the Hamiltons, a family that seemed to embody the American dream. Lisa and Eric Hamilton had moved to Sunrise from Jamaica years earlier, seeking a fresh start and a brighter future for their young daughter, Mia. They built a life that neighbors admired. Eric, a dedicated police officer, was well respected in the community for his commitment to keeping the town safe. Lisa, a teacher's aide at a local school, was known for her warmth and compassion, especially toward children with special needs. And then there was Mia, their 13-year-old daughter, a bright and sweet girl with developmental delays. Despite her challenges, Mia had a contagious smile and a vivid imagination, often spending hours drawing fantastical worlds filled with unicorns and rainbows. Her innocence and love for art made her a beacon of joy in the Hamilton household. To the outside world, the Hamiltons were the perfect family: a hard-working father, a loving mother, and a bright young girl with a passion for creativity. But behind the closed doors of their neatly kept home, a dark truth was festering, one that would tear their family apart and forever change the lives of everyone who knew them. This is the story of Lisa Hamilton, a woman who uncovered the unimaginable and the fateful night when love, betrayal, and desperation collided in a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. The Hamiltons were the kind of family everyone admired. Eric Hamilton, a seasoned police officer, was respected for his calm demeanor and dedication to keeping the streets of Sunrise, Florida, safe. Lisa Hamilton, his wife, worked tirelessly as a teacher's aide, always showing warmth and care for the children she helped. And then there was Mia, their 13-year-old daughter, whose innocence and creativity were the heart of the family. To outsiders, the Hamiltons represented everything good about their close-knit community. But as 2014 unfolded, Lisa began noticing subtle yet troubling changes in Eric's behavior, small shifts that would soon snowball into something much darker. Eric had always been deeply committed to his job, often taking extra shifts to provide for his family. But suddenly he started refusing overtime, something that was completely out of character. He began spending more time at home, a change Lisa initially welcomed. But his newfound presence in the house wasn't about family bonding. Instead, it revolved almost entirely around Mia. Eric's attention toward Mia grew in ways that Lisa couldn't ignore. He started helping her with her drawings, a hobby he'd never shown interest in before. At first, it seemed like a father's effort to connect with his child, but his behavior soon crossed the line from attentive to obsessive. Lisa noticed him lingering outside Mia's room late at night, finding excuses to check on her or talk about her artwork. His tone, usually firm and direct as a police officer, softened unnaturally when he was around Mia. It was as though he was playing a different role, one Lisa struggled to make sense of. Then there was the lotion. One evening, while washing Eric's uniform, Lisa found a bottle of lavender-scented lotion in his pocket. It was Mia's favorite, something she kept on the shelf in her room. Lisa stood frozen, holding the bottle in her hand, her mind racing to find a reasonable explanation. Maybe Eric had picked it up by mistake, she thought, trying to dismiss her unease. But deep down, the discovery planted a seed of doubt she couldn't ignore. Lisa's unease turned to dread one quiet night when she walked past Mia's room and heard a faint conversation. The door was slightly ajar, and Eric's voice was low and soft, almost coaxing. "It's our little secret," he whispered. Mia's reply was quiet and childlike, but Lisa couldn't make out the words. She froze, her heart pounding. The phrase, "our little secret," echoed in her mind, refusing to be dismissed. It was innocent enough on the surface, but in the context of everything she had observed, it carried a chilling weight. Was Eric hiding something? And if so, what? At this point, Lisa was caught in a whirlwind of emotions: confusion, fear, and guilt. Could it be that Eric was simply a doting father, trying to spend more time with Mia after years of working long hours? Or was there something far more sinister happening behind closed doors? Lisa wrestled with these questions, but the more she observed, the harder it became to convince herself that everything was fine. She began noticing every little detail. The way Eric's eyes lingered on Mia, the excuses he made to be alone with her, the overly gentle tone in his voice. Each moment added to her growing sense of unease. Lisa knew she couldn't stay silent, but the thought of confronting Eric was terrifying. He was a respected officer, a figure of authority in their community. If she was wrong, it could destroy their family. But if she was right, the consequences were too horrifying to imagine. Behind the closed doors of their seemingly perfect home, a storm was brewing. Lisa was left wondering, how well do you really know the people closest to you? And how far would you go to protect the ones you love? May 15th, 2014, began like any other day in Sunrise, Florida. The Hamilton household was quiet as the family settled in for the night. But as the hours crept into early morning, everything changed. Around 3 a.m., Lisa Hamilton stirred awake to an unsettling realization. Her husband, Eric, wasn't beside her in bed. At first, she dismissed it, thinking he might be in the kitchen or the bathroom. But as the moments passed, an unusual stillness filled the house. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a sleeping home. It was the kind of silence that makes your stomach tighten with dread. Lisa strained her ears and heard faint sounds, barely audible whispers coming from the direction of Mia's room. Her heart raced as she slipped out of bed and walked toward the hallway, her steps cautious and quiet. When she reached Mia's door, she noticed it was slightly ajar. A sliver of light spilled into the dark hallway, and as Lisa peered inside, the sight before her confirmed every fear she had been trying to suppress. Eric was sitting on the edge of Mia's bed, dressed only in his underwear. His hand rested on Mia's leg, gently stroking it. The scene froze Lisa in place, her mind struggling to comprehend what she was witnessing. Then she heard him speak in a voice so soft, so coaxing, it sent chills down her spine. "This is our little secret," he whispered. Mia lay still, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. She didn't move, as though she couldn't understand what was happening. For a moment, Lisa felt paralyzed, caught between disbelief and rage. Her breath quickened, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, horror, fury, and then something inside her snapped. She pushed the door open with a force that made it creak loudly, cutting through the eerie silence of the room. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp and trembling. Eric flinched and quickly pulled his hand away, standing up as though trying to compose himself. "It's not what you think, Lisa," he said, his tone calm but laced with unease. "I was just checking on her, making sure she was okay." But Lisa wasn't listening. Her eyes burned with fury as she gestured for Mia to come to her. The young girl hesitated, her body trembling, but she eventually slipped off the bed and ran to her mother's side. Lisa held her close, shielding her from Eric with her own body. "I saw what you were doing," Lisa said, her voice shaking with anger. "Don't you dare try to explain this away?" But Eric, realizing his usual calm demeanor wasn't working, changed his approach. His face darkened, and his tone turned menacing. "You don't understand," he said, taking a step toward them. "You'll ruin us. No one will believe you. I'm a respected officer, Lisa. Do you think anyone will side with you over me?" Lisa's grip on Mia tightened as she slowly backed out of the room. Eric's words hung in the air, dripping with both desperation and threat. She could feel the weight of his authority, the way he was trying to manipulate her into silence. But Lisa wasn't the same woman she had been just moments ago. Her fear was quickly being replaced by a fierce determination to protect her daughter. Once Lisa and Mia were safely in the master bedroom, Lisa locked the door and placed a chair under the handle for extra security. She could hear Eric's footsteps pacing outside, his anger escalating with every passing second. Then came the pounding. "Lisa, open the door," Eric shouted, his voice booming in the quiet house. "You're making a mistake. You don't know what you're doing." As Lisa held Mia close, trying to calm her shaking daughter, she couldn't ignore the fury in Eric's voice. "If you think you can ruin me, think again," he bellowed. "You'll destroy this family. Do you really want to do that to her? To yourself?" His words were relentless, each one designed to sow doubt and fear. But Lisa didn't waver. She knew she had to act, not just for Mia but to stop Eric from ever hurting her again. Inside the locked room, Lisa's mind raced. Should she call the police? Could she even trust them to help, knowing Eric's position as a respected officer? Every moment felt like an eternity, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. As Eric's pounding grew louder and his threats more aggressive, Lisa knew one thing for certain. She couldn't stay silent anymore. She couldn't allow Eric's darkness to consume their lives. From that moment, the night spiraled into events that no one could have predicted. Lisa's choice to confront, to protect, to survive, would soon lead to a tragic and irreversible outcome. The once perfect image of the Hamilton family would be shattered forever, and Sunrise, Florida, would wake to a nightmare that would haunt its residents for years to come. As the night stretched on, the pounding on the locked bedroom door became relentless. Eric's threats echoed in Lisa's ears, each word laced with anger and desperation. "You're going to ruin everything. No one will believe you," he shouted. Lisa sat on the bed, her daughter Mia trembling in her arms, both of them consumed by fear. For Lisa, the weight of the moment was unbearable. She realized there was no escaping the truth. Not for her, not for Mia. She could no longer protect her daughter by staying silent. Lisa's eyes shifted to the dresser where Eric's service pistol was kept. Her heart raced as she opened the drawer and pulled out the weapon. The cold metal felt heavy in her hands, a physical manifestation of the burden she carried. But in that moment, fear gave way to resolve. She knew she had to confront Eric, to put an end to the nightmare he had created. Slowly, she unlocked the bedroom door. When Lisa stepped into the hallway, Eric froze at the sight of the gun in her hands. His confident, manipulative demeanor faltered, replaced by fear. "Put the gun down, Lisa," he said, his voice softening as he tried to regain control. "You don't know what you're doing. Think about Mia, think about us." But Lisa wasn't listening anymore. Years of suppressed anger and heartbreak had risen to the surface, and she was no longer the woman who would back down. "You destroyed us," she said, her voice steady but filled with rage. Eric took a cautious step forward, raising his hands as if to calm her. But Lisa raised the gun, her finger trembling on the trigger. The first shot rang out, shattering the silence of the house. Eric stumbled back, clutching his shoulder, but Lisa didn't stop. She fired again and again, each pull of the trigger unleashing the pain, fear, and fury she had bottled up for so long. By the time the echoes of the gunfire faded, Eric's body lay motionless on the floor, a pool of blood spreading beneath him. Lisa had fired 14 shots, each one a final act of defiance against the man who had betrayed her and her daughter. But the nightmare wasn't over. As Lisa stood over Eric's lifeless body, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. She turned back to Mia, who was standing in the doorway, her small frame trembling with fear. Lisa's heart broke at the sight of her daughter, so young and innocent, yet already scarred by the horrors of that night. She thought about the future. The questions, the stares, the weight of what Mia would have to carry for the rest of her life. Lisa's mind raced as she struggled to make sense of it all. She had spent years trying to protect Mia from harm, but now she realized that even with Eric gone, the world outside their home would never let her daughter escape this tragedy. In her grief-stricken state, Lisa made an unthinkable decision, one she believed was the ultimate act of love and protection. She knelt down and took Mia's trembling hands in her own. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "I love you more than anything. I will always protect you." Before Mia could respond, Lisa raised the gun. The final shot echoed through the house, cutting through the oppressive silence. Mia's lifeless body fell into Lisa's arms, and the mother who had done everything to shield her daughter from pain was now consumed by her own despair. The sound of gunfire shattered the stillness of the early morning. Neighbors, startled awake by the rapid succession of shots, rushed to their windows. Many hesitated to step outside, unsure of what was happening, but the gravity of the situation was undeniable. Multiple calls were made to 911, reporting gunfire at the Hamilton residence. Within minutes, the flashing lights of police cars and emergency vehicles lit up the quiet street. When officers entered the home, they moved cautiously, their weapons drawn. The scene they encountered was one that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. In the hallway, they found Eric Hamilton's body riddled with bullet wounds. The bloodied pistol lay discarded nearby, a grim testament to the violence that had unfolded. But it was in Mia's room where the full weight of the tragedy became clear. Lisa sat on the floor, cradling Mia's lifeless body in her arms. Her face was streaked with tears, her expression a mixture of anguish and emptiness. As the officers approached, they heard her whispering over and over, "Forgive me, baby? I love you. I'm so sorry." Her voice was quiet, almost drowned out by the sound of their own footsteps, but the words carried the weight of a broken heart. The officers gently took the gun from Lisa's trembling hands and placed her in handcuffs. She didn't resist. She didn't say a word as they led her out of the house, past the flashing lights and stunned neighbors. The quiet street that had once been a symbol of safety and community was now a crime scene, its serenity forever shattered. The tragedy at the Hamilton household shocked not just the quiet neighborhood of Sunrise, Florida, but the entire nation. In the days that followed the horrifying events, investigators pieced together the grim reality that had unfolded within those walls. Evidence began to emerge, shedding light on the dark secrets that had been hidden beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect family. Among the most damning pieces of evidence was Mia's diary, a small, colorful notebook filled with her innocent drawings and childlike musings. But tucked between the pages of unicorns and rainbows were entries that painted a picture of unimaginable pain. Mia had written about her confusion and fear, detailing moments with her father that she didn't understand but knew felt wrong. "He says it's our little secret," one entry read, "but I don't like it. I want it to stop." These words left no room for doubt. Eric Hamilton, the man revered as a respected police officer, had been systematically abusing his own daughter for years. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. How could a man entrusted with protecting others commit such heinous acts? Neighbors who had once admired Eric struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the predator exposed by the investigation. The betrayal cut deep, not only for those close to the family but also for the wider public who trusted people like Eric to uphold justice and integrity. The community's response to the tragedy was deeply divided. On one side, there were those who viewed Lisa Hamilton as a mother driven to the brink, a woman who acted out of desperation and love for her daughter. They saw her as a hero who took justice into her own hands when the system failed to protect the most vulnerable. "She did what any mother would do," said one neighbor. "She protected her child the only way she knew how." On the other side, however, were those who couldn't overlook Lisa's actions, particularly the decision to take Mia's life. To them, this was an act of cold-blooded murder, no matter the circumstances. "I understand her pain," one local resident said, "but taking her daughter's life was unforgivable." There were other ways to handle this. These polarized opinions sparked heated debates, not just in the neighborhood but across the country, as people grappled with the moral complexities of the case. When Lisa's trial began, the courtroom was packed with spectators, journalists, and activists, all eager to see how the justice system would handle such a complicated case. The prosecution wasted no time in building their argument. They painted Lisa as a woman who acted with premeditation and a clear intent to kill. They pointed to the 14 shots fired at Eric as evidence of deliberate overkill, and Mia's death, they argued, was a calculated decision rather than an act of desperation. This was not a crime of passion, the prosecutor declared. This was a series of conscious choices to take 2 lives. The defense, however, presented a starkly different narrative. They argued that Lisa was a mother who had been pushed beyond her limits by years of betrayal and fear. Testimony from psychologists revealed that Lisa had been suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, after discovering the abuse. They described her actions as those of a broken woman who believed she had no other way to protect her daughter from further harm or the trauma of a future shaped by Eric's actions. Lisa Hamilton didn't act with malice, her defense lawyer said. She acted with the desperation of a mother who saw no other way out. The trial also brought to light systemic failures. Activists questioned how a man like Eric, with such a dark secret, could have gone undetected for so long. They called for reforms in law enforcement oversight and better protections for victims of domestic abuse, particularly those with developmental delays like Mia. After weeks of emotional testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a decision. Lisa Hamilton was found guilty of second-degree murder in the case of Eric Hamilton and involuntary manslaughter in the case of her daughter, Mia. The judge, acknowledging the complexity of the case, sentenced Lisa to 25 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 15 years. In his closing remarks, he said, "This court recognizes the tragedy of this case, a tragedy that stems from betrayal, pain, and the ultimate breakdown of trust. While we cannot condone Lisa Hamilton's actions, we must also acknowledge the unimaginable circumstances that led her here." Lisa Hamilton's story is one of betrayal, desperation, and a mother's ultimate sacrifice. It is a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How far would you go to protect the ones you love? And at what cost? For some, Lisa's actions were those of a mother protecting her child at all costs. For others, they were an unthinkable breach of the very love she claimed to act on. This case leaves no easy answers, only a sobering reminder of the fragile line between right and wrong, and the devastating consequences when that line is crossed. Today, the Hamilton tragedy is remembered not just as a story of loss, but as a catalyst for change. It brought attention to the hidden darkness that can exist even in the most seemingly perfect lives and highlighted the importance of vigilance and support for victims of abuse. But for those who knew Lisa, Eric, and Mia, the wounds remain raw. A reminder that even in the brightest places, shadows can linger. This case leaves us with more questions than answers. Was Lisa Hamilton a victim of unimaginable circumstances, pushed to her breaking point by betrayal and fear? Or did her actions cross an unforgivable line, regardless of the pain she endured? Could there have been another way? A way that might have saved her daughter and herself from this devastating tragedy? These are questions only you, the viewer, can wrestle with. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you see Lisa as a mother acting out of love and desperation? Or do her actions demand accountability beyond her intentions? I'm curious to hear your perspective. If stories like this intrigue you and make you reflect on the complexities of human behavior, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. We uncover the darkest corners of the human experience and bring you the truth behind some of the most compelling cases. Until next time, stay safe and remember, sometimes the darkest secrets are hidden in plain sight.